A local bear attack victim tells his story. Local laws regarding pythons under the microscope. And charges laid in a Max store robbery. Good evening and thank you for joining us. Well, the Thunder Bay man who escaped a bear attack Saturday morning is telling his ordeal. Trevor Miller was out for a walk with his two dogs at a provincial park in Ignace when they were attacked by a predatory black bear. The 2-hour standoff claimed the life of one pet, leaving Miller without one of his best friends. Nate Jones tells his story.
For Trevor Miller, he didn't even see it coming. Out for a walk at Sandbar Lake Provincial Park with his dog and his sister's dog, Miller decided to take a break at a picnic table. He was blindsided from behind by a fully grown black bear, which knocked him to the ground. Panicking, he attempted to grab the two dogs and wade deep into the nearby lake.
My bag was on the shore that he batted around a bit, and I had a camera in it. And at the first, I thought, I hope he doesn't break my camera. I was like, but then I realized, like, this isn't over. This isn't, this is happening. Like, it didn't feel like it was happening.
From there, it was about 2 hours of the bear attempting to attack Miller and the dogs. More than once, it swam out to get him and was turned back after being hit on the nose with a stick that he found. Yelling at the bear with one dog on his shoulder and one under his arm, he did everything he could to deter the animal. After a while, it looked like the bear had left.
I ran up to the picnic table and I grabbed the leashes and I ran back to the water. And before I was at the water, he come out at the picnic table again. It was like he knew where I had to go, and he was just always right behind me or right in front of me. And
finally, they managed to get away and started to run. Miller looked behind him and the bear was following. Armed with a pocket knife and a stick, he faced off with the bear twice. The third time, his sister's dog, Spyro, stepped up.
he just walked right up to the bear, and the bear, just raised up and just like grabbed him and ran. And like my heart just sank.
Miller and his dog Puzzle made it to a ranger station. It wasn't until he was examined that he realized he had been bit by the bear. Since then, the bear has been captured and euthanized. But Miller has lost one of his best friends forever.
He did that for me, and I could feel like him telling me now, to just run now.
Nate Jones, TBT News.
Everyone is looking for answers into why 2 young boys were killed by a python in New Brunswick this weekend. There are rules about exotic pets like large snakes, and Thunder Bay has a bylaw prohibiting certain types of constrictors. Meanwhile, a local reptile expert says it's the size and not the species which may be the problem. Cheryl Holmes reports.
Thunder Bay has a large list of banned animals. The list includes all snakes from the boa and python families, as well as any venomous reptiles.
Some of these animals just don't adapt well to captivity, so people acquire these animals without realizing what they're really getting into.
Well, there's many snakes, many lizards that are good pet material. When you're getting the boas and pythons, the bigger species, there's a lot of safety issues involved.
Those safety issues could be anything from possible diseases carried by the snake to improper feeding methods and a lack of education. Camstress says big snakes must be kept in terrariums, not aquariums, as was the case in the New Brunswick tragedy, where 2 brothers aged 4 and 6 were asphyxiated by a python that escaped from a pet store downstairs from an upstairs apartment. Thunder Bay's bylaw allows traveling wildlife shows or other people to keep boas and pythons only for zoo, education, and research purposes, or with a permit.
Generally, that rule is there because most of those people do require a certain expertise. They have specialized permits, and so they are better equipped to handle those types of animals.
Reptile Rob says large exotic animals should be owned by herpetologists and others who've studied amphibians their whole lives. Any snake that reaches 10 or 15 feet at adult size is too big for a family home.
You can tame them to a degree of handling them, but there's always handling issues. Anything over 6 feet, regardless if it's a corn snake, garter snake, anything, okay? Anything over 6 feet is guaranteed you got to get another person involved.
Reptile Rob says generally the larger species of snakes shouldn't be kept as pets, but if you do want to have a snake as a pet, a smaller guy like this is probably a better choice. Cheryl Holmes, TBT News.
We'll have more on that tragic New Brunswick case coming up a little later on. Well, after a thorough international search, the Community Economic Development Commission has found its new CEO right here in Thunder Bay. Former Resolute Forest Products General Manager Doug Murray will be stepping into his new role next week. The chair of the CEDC and local politicians welcomed Murray into the position today. The newly appointed CEO says there's a lot of his agenda that needs to be addressed, with mining readiness near the top of the list. He is ensuring Thunder Bay is prepared and ready for spin-off jobs being created. Murray adds it's important to invest in a variety of businesses to keep economic growth stable.
Diversification is really important so that we don't have all our eggs in one basket. It doesn't mean that forestry still isn't important, because it is. The grain handling business is still important, but we need to grow other parts of the business. You know, healthcare. Look at how healthcare is expanded.
The chair of the CEDC, Pauline Sutter, thinks they have the right man for the job because of his engineering education and strong business background.
He's got a very strong background in a lot of things that are relevant to us here, in energy, in forestry, in value-added forestry, and he's got a great breadth of knowledge and understanding of our local economy.
Murray replaces former CEO Steve Demings, who resigned in the spring. Well, it was an opportunity for northern municipalities to have their voice heard. Minister of Infrastructure and Transportation Glenn Murray was in Murillo today, speaking with officials about issues currently being faced in their communities. As Courtney Rutherford tells us, a new program worth tens of millions of dollars could lead to infrastructure improvements starting as early as this fall.
Decisions in the north about the north should be made by people in the north.
It's all about revitalizing roads, bridges, and critical infrastructure in northern municipalities. A budget of $100 million could help small, rural, and northern communities take on projects that will help improve transportation of people and products, and ultimately create more jobs and a more inclusive place to live.
We have been building high-quality research facilities here. So it's not just about pipes and pavement, it is about that, but it's also about the education, the law schools, that give Northerners more choices and more ability to build their economy here and stay here and be able to go to school here.
$100 million would be available October 1st of this year. However, the one-year fund could become permanent as part of the 2014 Ontario budget. Local representatives gathered here to give feedback and discuss where the money ultimately could be going. MPP Bill Morrow says the upgrades in these municipalities won't be able to be completed on their own.
Quite frankly, they can't do it without provincial help. And as the minister has said earlier, it would be really wonderful if the federal government would find some capacity to step up to the plate, especially on the highway issue, and aid the province in what it is we're trying to do. And then we think we could already certainly go a lot farther than we already have.
And that is exactly what the mayor of Oliver Papoonge, Lucy Kloosterhuis, is dealing with. She says a bridge located on Harstone Road needs significant repair. But with a price tag well into the millions, she says they need support in order to get the job done.
There are some municipalities, as stated at the beginning of this meeting, do not even have the funds to do an engineering study, which is a requirement to apply for the funding. So we have to look at it from the perspective of all different sized communities, and I hope that happens today, and I hope that's taken back to Toronto.
The consultations held in Murillo will help the province build on existing policies and begin to develop an infrastructure program that will respond to the needs of the municipalities. The money will start funding projects beginning this fall. Courtney Rutherford, TBT News.
A Thunder Bay man has been arrested and charged in connection with a robbery that occurred at a Mac store Saturday evening. At approximately 9:30, a man entered the store armed with a syringe. Police say he made off with a small amount of money and there were no injuries. The suspect did not wear a mask, and surveillance cameras provided a clear view of the suspect. City police say a 28-year-old man was arrested yesterday on the sidewalk in the 500 block of East Victoria Avenue. He remains in custody and will appear in court at a later date. Meanwhile, 2 men are in custody after a bust at the Drug Enforcement Unit and the Guns and Gangs Unit. Search warrants were issued for residences on Strand Avenue and Piccadilly Street following information about a cocaine trafficking operation. Police seized a handgun and $19,000 in cash and a variety of drugs worth about $5,000. The handgun had been reported stolen about 4 months ago. A 35-year-old man and a 25-year-old man are facing numerous charges. An investigation into watered-down cancer drugs given to patients in Ontario and New Brunswick concludes it was an honest mistake, but it recommends an overhaul of the system to make sure it doesn't happen again. Kim Brunebert reports.
She waited so long to do something so simple.
I'm feeling pretty good.
Kate Warner's chemo for breast cancer ended in June. Finally, her hair is back, but so is the fear.
Nobody wants cancer to return, and nobody wants to have to go through the treatment again. But we're never sure, and we may never be sure.
She's not sure because her chemo drugs were accidentally watered down. She's one of more than 1,200 affected patients in Ontario and New Brunswick. The chemotherapy bags were mixed by Marchese Hospital Solutions, and they contained more saline solution than the labels showed. And because the company fell in a jurisdictional gray area, neither the Ontario nor the federal government was supervising it.
No one should have to go through what the affected patients and their families have gone through. To those patients and their families, I want you to know how deeply sorry I am that you have had to go through this.
The Ontario government commissioned a report into the scandal. The pharmacist in charge of the review found the company diluted the drugs by 7 to 10%, but said it appeared to be an honest mistake.
The problem boiled down to gaps in communication and its unintended consequences.
The consequences for the patients, he says, is unknown but likely not serious. Chief among his recommendations, he says Health Canada should oversee all companies that mix drugs for hospitals. Health Canada says it's working with all the provinces to set up a national plan. And in the fall, the Ontario government says it will introduce legislation that will authorize the province's College of Pharmacists to oversee hospital pharmacies.
They should have done that a long time ago. This is a serious offense. You can't play with people's lives like that.
Warner says she's disappointed. A report with no blame and no punishment, and for her, still no answers. Kim Brunhuber, CBC News, Toronto.
The Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Centre and the Health Unit have declared a C. difficile outbreak over. The bacterium can cause mild to severe diarrhea and intestinal conditions like inflammation of the colon. The outbreak was contained to 2 inpatient surgical floors of the hospital and lasted for 3 weeks. A total of 5 cases were confirmed. A shiny new Great Lakes vessel, which is named after our city, is making its maiden voyage. The Thunder Bay is the latest Trillium-class vessel in the Canada Steamship Line's fleet. The ship picked up a load of iron ore pellets in Michigan and stopped today in Port Colborne, Ontario, where CSL officials celebrated its arrival with a formal ceremony. It will now head to the Port of Quebec to be unloaded. The Thunder Bay is one of 4 new CSL vessels built in China. It uses 15% less fuel than older vessels and also releases fewer emissions. Thunder Bay Port Authority CEO Tim Heaney says he's unsure whether the ship will visit the local port this season, but he says they're planning a large celebration for whenever the Thunder Bay does make its first stop here. Well, Thunder Bay's favorite family fair is here for another year. The CLE officially opened its doors to the public today, and it looks like it's going to be a great week. Officials are hoping for nice warm weather as more than 60,000 people are expected to head to the fair over the next 5 days. It's open every day from noon until midnight, and it offers midway rides, live entertainment, and over a dozen food vendors. Fair Chair Ralph Scarf says advance ticket sales were very high. According to him, there's one thing that keeps people coming back.
It's tradition. You know, your grandmother and grandfather brought your mom and dad here, and your mom and dad bring you to the fair. I think it's just something everybody looks forward to in the summer.
Expect a larger than normal midway this year with 4 new rides. There has also been an expansion of indoor activities to keep everyone happy at the family fair. Looks like a lot of fun.
Well, here's hoping the weather cooperates for them, unlike